Hi guys, I debated sharing this personal experience, but now that I'm on the other side, I do feel that this would be a great way for anyone that is going through something similar or just wants to connect with me on a more personal level, that this would be a helpful story to share. So today I'm going to be sharing my story of going into labor at 30 weeks pregnant and navigating life in the NICU. Let's get into it. So, my pregnancy was a normal, healthy pregnancy. I had had no problems. I had had no abnormal blood work, no abnormal ultrasounds, nothing of the sort. When we found out we were having a boy, we were ecstatic. I truly felt like it was a boy. Not that I have ESP, but I really felt like I was having a boy. And my son, or my husband, truly felt like it was a boy as well. So it was really neat when we found out the gender, found out that it was a boy. So when we did the gender, we actually did all of the early testing, like which I don't know if you're familiar with that or not, but it really will test for like Down syndrome, trisomy 18, some of those kind of things. But to be perfectly honest, I really wasn't testing for those. I really wanted to find out the gender because I'm extremely impatient and I didn't want to wait till the anatomy scan. So, anyways, when we got all that paperwork back, everything was completely fine. So we were like, okay, awesome. Found out we were having a boy and we invited over our family and friends. So, fast forward to me being 30 weeks pregnant. I went to work. As I've said previously, I am a hairstylist, so I do stand all day. And I had started to feel the effects of it, I'll say. And so I had lightened my load a little bit, had told some of my clients, like, I'm going to need to start spacing out some people's appointments. I can't be doing like color back to back, haircut back to back. Like, I've got to take some time to sit down. I'm starting to feel like the pressure, all the things. So that day, actually, I had gone to work and I was actually working a really light day. I was only working like 3 hours. I think I only had like 2 or 3 clients that day. And right when I was finished in the afternoon, I started to just feel like a little crampy. And again, didn't really think too much into it because I was like, well, I am 30 weeks pregnant. Maybe it's all this round ligament pain they talk about. I've never been pregnant. This is my first rodeo, so to speak. And so I was trying not to be too freak myself out basically. And I'm a very like realist kind of person. So I don't talk myself off the ledge often. But anyway, I went home and I took my dog for a walk. Axel, which unfortunately, if you've followed along, you've known that he's no longer with us anymore. So, but anyway, so I took my dog Axel for a walk, thinking like maybe I'll just get out, move around a little bit. It'll kind of, sometimes I feel like if I'm on my period and I'm cramping, working out actually helps ease the cramps. So that was kind of my like mentality, if you will. So I took him for a walk, and as I was walking, the cramping started to like intensify a little bit. To which at that point I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to go home and I'm going to lay down, but I'm going to call my mom because who else do we ever call? We call our mom or our grandma or whoever it is that you confide in, but mine would be my mother, obviously. So I call my mom, and of course, my mom is like, "You're probably fine. Like, you have nothing to worry about." Also, if you follow along, you know that I am one of 8 kids. So my mom has been through it enough to know, I'll say. So, anyways, I get off the phone with her. I had gone to the bathroom, and when I, looked on the toilet paper, I had seen some blood. And immediately I was like, started to kind of freak out a little bit, as I think anybody really would. who's never been pregnant, has never had spotting your whole pregnancy, nothing. So, along with the cramping and the other things. So, of course, I call my mom back and I'm like, I don't know. I'm kind of starting to freak out. She's like, well, where's Tony, who's my husband? I said, he's at work and I'm not going to call him because, he's busy and he has meetings and I don't even know if anything's going on and yada, yada, I don't want to freak him out if it's not necessary and all these things. And mom goes, why don't you go ahead and call the doctor? So I called and of course, you get the on-call nurse and what have you. Kind of told her what was going on and she's like, why don't you take some Tylenol or some Motrin or whatever, I don't even remember. She was like, just something to alleviate the cramping. She was like, get a heating pad, and she was like, are you doing your kick counts? And I was like, well, no. I don't know. Then you start, my mind just started freaking like, what is he moving? I don't know if he's moving. Your mind just really started really going. And that's kind of what was happening in that moment. Of course, I had gotten on Google and self-diagnosed myself as well, like we all like to do. This was before ChatGPT kind of came on the scene. And however, everything I was experiencing and all the symptoms I was putting into Google, it was all like verbatim, you are in premature labor, you need to go to the hospital, you need to contact your provider, yada, yada, yada. So I think in that moment, I kind of knew something wasn't right, simply because, as I stated previously, I had actually had a very incredible pregnancy. I was not tired. I had no morning sickness. My boobs never hurt. I had cravings, okay? I craved pizza and red sauce like you wouldn't fucking believe, which is actually hysterical because my son loves pizza. So there might be some truth to that. I don't know. But I just really had like a dream pregnancy. Like most people were like, oh my gosh, like you're so lucky. I'm like, yeah, like I don't know. So anyway, I had a few more instances with some, discharge when I went to the bathroom and some things. And I was really starting to feel like, okay, I don't know if this is my mucus plug. Like I don't know what's going on. And so I had been back and forth with the nurse. Fast forward, then my cramping started to intensify and I wasn't really feeling him move. So of course I went from here to here. I totally fucking freaked out. Called my mom. I'm in tears at this point. I'm like, everything I read is telling me I'm in premature labor. I don't know what to do. I'm freaking out. Tony's not home. My mom's like, I'm going to call Tony. I'm going to tell him what's going on and I'm going to have him come home. And so that's what happened. So my husband gets home. Of course, he's like, you need to sit on the couch, yada, yada. So by this point, when I had talked last to the nurse, she had said, maybe try to eat something like a granola bar or something that you crave to make the baby move around a little bit, whatever. And by this point, I wasn't having any more cramping. And I had gone to the bathroom a couple times and there was really nothing that I was seeing. So I was kind of thinking like, okay, like maybe it's nothing. Maybe I'm just, not that I was imagining anything, but maybe I'm just freaking myself out for no apparent reason. Because as humans, we do that sometimes. So I said, why don't we get pizza for dinner? Like that's been a constant craving for me. It always sounds good to me. So let's get pizza and maybe it'll make him move around a little bit. So that's what we did. We picked up pizza, we ate it, and I was kind of starting to feel like, okay, I felt him move a few times. So I was like, okay, like everything's fine. Everything's fine. It's fine. Well, then it wasn't fine. So, it was now inching closer to nighttime. It was like, I think it was 9 o'clock in the evening at this point. And I went to the bathroom and I had a pretty good size, for lack of a better word, glob that came out. So I immediately kind of went back down the rabbit hole. And I told my husband, I was like, I don't know what to do. I've never been pregnant. What I don't want to do is sit here if something is not right. I will never forgive myself. So I said, do I want to go to the hospital? No, I don't. But do I want to sit here and play the what if game? No, I don't. So he was like, I said, I think I'm going to call my mom and my husband. He goes, I think calling your mom is the wrong idea because you two are not helping anything. And I'm like, valid. Facts. Okay. Duly noted. He goes, if you're going to call anyone, you need to call back the nurse. And I'm like, fair. They are right sometimes. Only sometimes. So I went ahead, called the nurse, and I told her exactly, and I said what I just stated. I said, I'm not this, I might be freaking myself out for no reason, but I am having cramping. I am having discharge. I have had spotting, whatever. She goes, I'm going to go ahead and call the on-call doctor and I will call you back. I kid you not. She probably called me back within 90 seconds. Maybe it wasn't even that long. And she goes, the doctor wants to know how far away you are. And I said, from where? And she goes, from the hospital. And I said, oh, like 20, 25 minutes. She wants you to head there immediately. And I was like, okay. Well, then it was like the floodgates opened because I think in that moment I knew something was wrong. Because if it's 9 o'clock at night and the on-call doctor is telling me that I need to rush myself to the hospital because clearly she's concerned. They've been monitoring this since this afternoon and it hasn't let up. Clearly they want me to be evaluated. So then I, was totally beside myself at that point. So we get to the hospital and, they immediately admit me into triage, hook me up to all these monitors, to monitor my baby's heartbeat and all of the things. And the doctor sits down bedside with me and she goes, so why don't you tell me what's been going on today? And so I went through the whole gamut. And she looks at me and she goes, did you feel that just now? And I said, what? And she goes, did you feel that contraction? And I was like, excuse me? And she goes, you are in premature labor. And I just kind of sat there and I said, I'm not due until the end of January. This was like the second week of November. Okay. So mind you, I'm still thinking I have Thanksgiving to get through, Christmas, the New Year. I literally was like, hairdresser. I'm like, what am I going to do with all my clients? I'm like, oh my God, I have so many people scheduled for the next 2 months. What the hell am I going to do? What am I going to do for money? I'm like, I don't get paid. I don't have a paid maternity leave. Like, it was just like everything was just, again, my mind just started going. And she was like, none of that really matters right now, honestly. She said, I'm going to go ahead and check you. So she went ahead and evaluated me. She was like, you're 1.5 centimeters dilated, and that's more than I'd like to see at 30 weeks pregnant for someone who's never had a child, a vaginal delivery, never been pregnant, whatever. She was like, I am going to go ahead and get someone down here. We need to give you a magnesium drip. We need to stop this labor from progressing. It's going to make you feel like you have the flu. We are also going to do an injection of steroids for your baby's lungs because right now at 30 weeks, his lungs are not fully developed. His brain is not fully developed. He is really at high risk for cerebral palsy. I mean, I just was like, what? I mean, even just rambling all of that out right in this very minute, it so vividly takes me right back to, I told myself I wasn't going to get emotional, damn it. It just takes me right back to laying in that hospital bed and just kind of feeling like all the excitement had just been really just emptied from me. Um, Here I was 24 hours prior, normal, happy, healthy, pregnant, and now I'm admitted to the hospital. I'm not leaving. I don't know when I'm going home. I might be here till I have him. I mean, it was just the thoughts that were going through my mind were just like I couldn't really get a good grasp on myself at that point. I was I was freaking out. They bring in the nurse to give me my magnesium drip, and poor girl, I remember her vividly. And I remember her asking, so are you having a boy? Are you having a girl? Have you thought of any names? And I just kind of stared blankly at the wall because I was in that moment, I really was kind of like, who cares what I'm having? Who cares what names I've thought of? Now this is a really serious situation. And I just can't even believe this is happening to me. And I just remember laying there and starting to feel all fuzzy from the magnesium drip that was going throughout my body. And I just remember hearing the clock on the wall, and I really couldn't hear anything else. I think I was really, excuse me, in a twilight zone at that point, if that makes sense. And the doctor came back in and she said, I'm going to have the team of NICU doctors come down and talk to you. I'm going to have high risk specialists come down and talk to you. We're going to go ahead and schedule in another anatomy scan. And I said, I've already had an anatomy scan, like everything was fine. And she was like, well, we need to really check the measurements on his head, on his brain, his heart, all those things. So she was like, you're not going home tonight. You're not going to go home for a few days. We're going to get you a room upstairs, yada, yada. And so I just remember tears just streaming down my face. I was so scared at that moment of what I was up against. My brain, like my mind, just kind of went into a total fog. And I remember looking at my husband and I said, I am never doing this again. I am never doing this again. And he was like, okay. And he was like, I'm sorry. Obviously, I did do it again because I have another child. So that worked out real well. But so they took us up to a room, stayed the night. Next morning, I had my anatomy scan. And I vividly remember the ultrasound tech. It was a very in-depth anatomy scan at that point. Being 30 weeks pregnant, having no issues all pregnancy, I think it had also boggled their brains as to what caused this. Like I said, I had never been pregnant. All my ultrasounds were normal. I was progressing normally. This really just, I think, threw everyone for a loop, including the medical team. They thought maybe placental abruption, but they were like, no, they really just couldn't understand, I guess, why my body was kind of not wanting to carry this pregnancy any longer. So I did the anatomy scan, and I remember the ultrasound tech. I was laying on a bed, and she had me flipped all the way, pretty much like this, with my feet in the air and my head at the bottom. And she was like, his head is so far down in your birth canal, I cannot get a good measurement on his head and his brain. I'm trying to tilt you to see if maybe he'll, come up a little bit. And she's like pushing the little, whatever that thing is, the little wand thing on my abdomen, trying to kind of get him to like move a little. And I could feel the pressure of his head. So I was like, if he is that far down in my canal, he ain't moving. So they brought in the high risk doctor, and she kind of went over the ultrasound with me. She said everything looked good. She said, but I need you to gain some weight. And I was like, okay. She was like, he is not even 3 pounds. And I really want you to deliver a baby that's at least 3 pounds. She's like, I'm not talking eating a bunch of crap, but you need to bulk up on protein. Like, you need to start eating. And I'm like, okay. So, fast forward. Couple days go by. By this point, I had obviously reached out to my clients, let them know what was going on. Obviously, of course, everybody well wishes and all. So, finally, I had 3 different doctors come in, and I kid you not, I got a different answer from each doctor. One stating placental abruption. 2 stating that nothing is wrong. She's certain that I'll care to 40 weeks pregnant, go home and carry on about my business. I'm sorry, but that lady was a fucking idiot. Sorry, I'm not sorry. Go on and carry about my business. Like, are you crazy? Clearly, she obviously didn't know, because I gave birth literally not even 2 weeks later. So anyway, I said, so are you putting me on bed rest, which was kind of my assumption. Well, we can't technically put you on bed rest because there's really no accurate proof behind that, but you need to really not do anything. So basically, I was on bed rest without being on bed rest. And they told me that I needed to have weekly appointments, blah, blah, blah. So they sent me home. Naturally, I was on bed rest. My family's like, you're not doing anything. I'm like, fair. So I had a weekly appointment. So I went to my first appointment, and she didn't check me or anything, because she was like, that can actually make you dilate. So I'm just you're still pregnant. That's great. Keep doing what you're doing. Well, like I said earlier, I am impatient. I was going fucking crazy. Okay. I couldn't walk my dog. I couldn't use my steps. My mom's like, don't take a shower too long. Don't shave your legs. My sisters and my mom, we went to a craft show. We had tickets for a fucking craft show. They walked me around in a goddamn wheelchair. Okay. I was losing it. Your girl was going through it. I said, can I like run an errand? And she goes, I think you would be fine to maybe run in the store, pick up a couple things, but I don't want you doing Christmas shopping, if that makes sense. And I said, okay. So I went into Bath and Body Works. I picked up some soaps, because God forbid I didn't have my Christmas scented soaps by my sink, girl problems. So I got my soaps, and I went into Aldi, I think, to get like a couple things. Came home, and next day I had told my mom, I said, I need preemie outfits. I don't have any preemie outfits. I think in my mind, I was really trying to keep myself busy. I knew what was at stake, okay? The stress I had for the following 8 days I was so stressed. Every day every minute I would go to the bathroom and I would wipe. I'd be constantly looking at the toilet paper, seeing if there was something. Every little twinge or tinge I felt, I was like, oh my God, am I going into labor? I mean, I had so much anxiety around the entire situation. It was almost like I just wanted to get it over with. I was so stressed about it that I just I had so many people watching me like a hawk. I kind of just, I needed something to like keep me busy because I was going stir crazy. And so, I told my mom, I said, I need preemie outfits. There's a Carter's that's near Target by your house. Like, but I'm only going to go if you'll go with me. She goes, well, obviously you're not going by yourself. Little did I know those preemie outfits were still going to be um, way too large for my little baby boy. But again, I think in my mind at the time, I just was kind of trying to reclaim some of that excitement that I felt like had been ripped out from underneath me. And I think I was trying to be positive, think happy thoughts, think, you know, I have the steroid shots, I've had the magnesium drip, like everything's going to be fine. But I could still feel the immense pressure. And so I knew there was no way I was making it to, 36 weeks pregnant, to term, not even full term, but to term. I thought there's just no way. In my mind, my goal was December 1st. I was like, if I can make it to December, then I'll feel like I accomplished that. Well, that didn't happen. So we walked over to Target, and I'm walking through very slowly. I was getting nursing bras. I think I was just, kind of manic, I think, at that point, just like buying things just because. And I'm walking through and I'm leaning on the cart so heavily. And I'm like, God, is this like the pressure they talk about? Like before, like I feel like I could pee and he's going to fall out. My mom's like, you need to go home. I drive home. Everybody's like, you drove home? I'm like, I drive home. I get home. My husband's like, your mom already called me. I'm like, of course she did. He's like, get on the couch. I'm going to give you something to eat, whatever. So I laid on the couch. I took a nap. And maybe like 3 hours later, I was like, come on, Axel. And I went into my son's bedroom and I said, you want to help mommy finish packing her hospital bag? I kid you not. I no sooner sat on the floor, Indian style, and just like in the movies, like someone had a goddamn balloon full of water in between my legs. My water burst. And I knew immediately because I had never felt a feeling like that. And I immediately was like, Anthony, he comes in. I was like, my water broke. I said, call my mom. And he's like, okay. So he calls my mom and my mom's like, are you joking? As you guys can tell how sarcastic I am. I'm always joking. I said, no. I was like, my water broke. So we head straight to the hospital. So we get down there. They don't take me seriously. Now, I have my feelings, but I will reserve them. Being that I was now 31 weeks and 1 day pregnant, I am still extremely premature. Okay? They put me in triage. They admit me. I sat down there for probably over an hour before a doctor came in to check me. And I was laboring at that point. I remember they had me give a urine sample. I was like, are you fucking kidding me? I mean, I think at that point I was like, I'm pretty sure it's going to tell you I'm pregnant. So I'm like, so the girl goes, are you sure? I'm like, listen, I was just here 8 days ago. If you want to go ahead and look up my chart. Okay. I have received steroid shots. I have received a magnesium drip. I have been on bed rest for the last, almost week and a half. And I know what happened. Okay. I'm not hallucinating. I didn't piss my pants. All right. My water fucking broke. Okay. It's on like Donkey Kong. So let's get someone in here to give me some goddamn medicine. I don't want to do this shit natural. So finally, they that part was a little foggy to me actually. I just know that I was having I was contracting. And I remember telling my husband, I was like, you need to go get somebody. And he's like, well, I said, I don't care who it is. I don't care if it's the janitor. Get someone. I need drugs. Like, I need something. I don't care how small he is. I don't want to do this without medication. So, finally they came in and they had me on monitors. His heart rate tanked. Well, then all of a sudden I was, top priority. I had about, I don't know, probably 6 to 8 people around my bed at that point. They hurried up, got an IV. They didn't even have an IV in my arm. Okay. They hurried up, got an IV in my arm, went ahead. They gave me another magnesium drip, I guess thinking they could stop the labor again. But it was too late. Finally, the doctor comes in. I am almost 6 centimeters dilated. And they take me up to labor and delivery, where things kind of calmed down a little bit. So this was the day before Thanksgiving. It was November 22nd, 2023. And I had a great bedside nurses. They were fucking awesome. They were great. And I remember asking what doctor was on duty that night, whatever. And they said Dr. Barhorst. And I had only seen her a couple times, but I was like, okay. And they kind of went through the gamut with me. They were like, I just want to go ahead and kind of give you like a rundown of what's going to happen. We are going to have the NICU team in here. When you birth him, you will be able to see him, but we will be immediately putting him in the incubator. And again, I think I just was still kind of just like in this twilight zone at this point. I think I still was just like, okay, like again, still not really knowing, what was happening. I honestly kind of was like, is he going to be fully formed? Is he going to look like an actual baby? I know that sounds maybe stupid to say, but you're watching this whole thing on your app every week of, what size they are. And now they're the size of a blueberry or a chocolate chip. And they kind of look like a tadpole. And now this is formed. At 31 weeks, I didn't really know what to expect. I obviously had known that a week prior, his brain was not fully developed. His lungs were not fully developed. So I didn't know what to expect. And I still was scared at this point. But I think I also had a huge sense of relief that had come over me. Like trying to keep myself pregnant was finally over. So the doctor came in. My labor progressed pretty quickly. I want to say we had got to the hospital around 5:30, 6 p.m. and I had him by 11:35 p.m. So it was pretty quick from start to finish. They went ahead and they did call in the anesthesiologist to give me an epidural because, like I said, I did not want to, even though he was so little and I probably could have gone natural. I just knew that if I went that route, there was no turning back. I had to keep going the route. So to all the people that do it unmedicated, it ain't for me. So they called the anesthesiologist in. They had told me, like, if you want an epidural, you need to make this decision immediately because you are, you're getting there. I'm honestly surprised they gave it to me. I was 9.5 centimeters dilated, they said. So even the nurse, she goes, I'm kind of surprised, you know, they gave it to you. So anyway, um, then things kind of stalled for a little, and then it was time to push. And I pushed 3 times, and he slid right out. He was a tiny little guy. Um, and I had my sweet little Noah, and he weighed 3 pounds, 1.8 ounces. And, they held him up to me and immediately took him away. He was covered in a CPAP machine. He had all these, um, cords and sticky tabs all over him. And, they brought him over to me and they let me hold him. But I did not get any skin to skin or anything like that, which I didn't realize, I think, until I had my second son. Kind of all of those first moments that I had been robbed of, you know, to no fault of my own, but, that I never got that with Noah. So, I did get it with my second son. So that was a blessing. So, they let me see him. I think I saw him and I held him for all of about, it was maybe 2 minutes. And they were like, we need to get him down to the NICU immediately. And so that was that. So they took him away. My husband left bedside, um, went down with him. I said, obviously, go down there. And you'll have to stay tuned for part 2. And I will share all the first days in the NICU, the bridges I crossed in the NICU. It was just a totally different experience that I think I could have never prepared myself for the road that lied ahead.